Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dakota Frandsen, and I am the Specialist of the Strange. Today is May 10th, 2019. Tonight, I wanted to discuss a topic that brings up a lot of controversy, especially in political climates. The notion of government secrecy. Why? State, local, federal, law enforcement agencies, government contractors, investigative parties, and so on, choose to withhold information from the public. Why is it these measures are in place? And do they really contribute to many of the conspiracy theories that we hear of and see portrayed in many of our media? That is something I wanted to discuss tonight. So please, do stay tuned, because this is something you will want to hear. Hey everyone, Dakota Frandsen here, Specialist of the Strange. I just wanted to come with you real quick about potentially doing your own podcast. Have you ever wanted to start your own podcast? Maybe you got a lot of questions like, how do I record? How do I get my show into all these apps that are out there? How can I make money? There are probably several thousand other questions about getting this show off the ground that you have been formulating and communicating in your mind. And I'm here to tell you that there is a very simple answer to this. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, distributing your show. And best of all, it is 100% free. Get all the perks from the other guys without having to pay for subscription fees. And best of all, it is easy. And in fact, Anchor can match you up with sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast right now, which means you can get paid doing what you love. Isn't that the fucking dream, my friends? In fact, that's actually what I'm trying to do right now by reading this ad for you. It is amazing. It helps ease the process for guests, putting on music, whatever you want to do. So if you want to start your podcast, make some money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start to join me and several other fabulous people already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. And I cannot wait to hear you on the air. Before I continue tonight, I wanted to give a shout out to the Twin Falls High School in Twin Falls, Idaho. One of my old schools I attended to, there was an incident today in which the school was evacuated due to threats of a school shooting being made on social media. Everybody's fine. They evacuated the school. And the students involved were caught and arrested for making such threats. Just wanted to give them a quick shout out because I do know that some of my friends' younger siblings happened to be in attendance today, and they were a little worried once the rumors started getting spread out. I don't blame you guys for being worried, but honestly, I had to say that I honestly saw that coming with things that were going on. From the sounds of it, it didn't get much better. Most likely, these students involved that made these threats were either bullied themselves and wanted to put a scare into the people causing them problems, or just a couple idiot kids deciding to pull a really, really poor tasting jokes. Whatever the case may be, I'm glad everybody is okay. But let's move on with our program, shall we? The idea for tonight's episode comes from a conversation I had on a recent video upload titled Hunter's Video Blog, in which a viewer, just like you, oh my god, leave me alone, you know I have my show to do. I'm sorry, I'm getting Snapchat messages from a friend of mine. Oh boy. Anyway, tonight's episode was inspired by a viewer on my Hunter's Video Blog post, in which stated people needed to be brought in on the secrets of the world. Now, when I mention government secrets, a lot of you are probably thinking political corruption, Illuminati, things of that nature, extraterrestrial cover-ups. I'm going to admit, yes, that is part of it. And yes, maybe there's some things out there that the government is underestimating the population. However, having a presence within social media standings, don't think that would be the appropriate terminology. Sorry. God, I sound like a fucking old man. Anyway, within the social media standings gives an opportunity to observe human nature. And despite what people think, our presence on social media actually tells a lot more about us than what you realize. And a lot of it can be used and will be used against you at some point in your life. How is that so? Well, it's not just thorough background checks from potential job employers who over-examine harmless jokes that you may make on your social media page amongst friends. It's things that could easily be used against you in a criminal investigation. Now, I'll be honest, while I do agree that there are matters that people should be brought in on, society as a whole is simply not ready. And it's just looking at the day-to-day activities of most people, you can see why the government feels the need to suppress a lot of information. Unfortunately, when it comes to government secrecy, dealings with the Illuminati, extraterrestrials, secret government projects, that is only a small portion of it. Chances are, and I am willing to bet on this, with nearly every dollar I have, every state, local, federal, law enforcement agency, every investigative party, from dispatchers to doctors, nurses, EMTs, forest rangers, even various companies, so on. There are all matters. They all possess matters in which are kept tightly wrapped to avoid problems. This is a very, very sugar-coated example of what's going on. Because most companies, it is just to avoid it's likely just to avoid their competitors learning their secrets, selling out, and making a profit on things they own the rights to. Preventing them from beating them to certain ideas, putting out certain products, so on and so forth. certain transportation departments have protocols for when they find a dead body on the side of the road, or if they spot a potential suicide. Normally, at some point it involves law enforcement being called in. But if they are able to suppress that has happened, keep it away from the public eye so people don't freak out, they're going to. The police in every jurisdiction is most likely withholding information on certain cases that the people who may be involved in said cases, not from the police angle, but the civilian angles, the victims themselves, might not even be aware of. You get the state and federal, it's the same thing. There are things that they know about what is going on in the world that they will admit to in some ways, and possibly the Vegas. Not Vegas like Viva Las Vegas. No. Vagueness. Pardon. In the most vague way they can think of. Just to avoid their asses getting in trouble. Unfortunately, there are people who have negative intentions that take advantage of these things. For example, I do know of a small town in rural Texas right now who is dealing with corrupt sheriff and a corrupt deputy right now. And there is speculation amongst the public that the sheriff is solely responsible. And in fact, I've talked about this case on a previous episode. The sheriff is responsible for the death of a young man who had been missing until a few months ago. His body turned up. Yes, corrupt people take advantage of this secrecy. And if you look throughout history, you can probably pinpoint with pretty good accuracy the exact moments in which the corrupt took over. And that is no secret. Now, in those cases, yeah, the public should probably be notified that something's up. But chances are, the investigative parties will not release any information until they know for sure they have it under control, they have it all the facts together, and that they can handle whatever comes their way. And this is one of those cases where, unfortunately, many of the investigative parties have procedures in place that are tried and true, improved on through various scenarios in which they had to take care of potentially messed up sons of bitches. Because honestly, if you knew exactly what was out there, and I am not just talking about the paranormal, if you knew the type of sick and fucked up things people are capable of nowadays, would you want to step outside? You probably would want to smash every electronic that you own. Like the one that's constantly buzzing at me because I'm getting messages from friends of mine who don't realize I'm in the middle of a recording session. Sorry. If you guys happen to listen, I don't mind you messaging me. You know, I just tend to speak a little too truthfully about these things. Because I'll be honest with you. There are certain things that I have seen in my involvement with these things, with police and government investigations, that occasionally give me night terrors. I'll be completely honest with you. But also, unfortunately, I'll be honest, in those cases, those night terrors come from the fact that very close people to me were affected by these things. And that's why I got involved. Honestly, how comfortable would you feel knowing how many cops, how many pediatricians, doctors, bus drivers, mailmen, people you would see, likely see on a somewhat regular basis, just doing their own thing, doing their jobs? How would you feel if you knew how many of them were involved in sex trafficking rings? How would you feel if you found out that someone you cared about had a cannibalism fetish? And yes, that is a very, very real thing. And there are also recipe books on how to cook human flesh, what sort of meats. They even recommend what kind of wine goes good with certain body parts. In fact, here's one that happened not too long ago that some of you who may be from my area, or if you are in the state of Colorado, might be familiar with. A few months ago, I believe it was back in November, a pregnant woman went missing. That investigation turned up leads here in Idaho. And it was because her cell phone was being pinged within a local city that I have contacts in. Because of that, the federal government, the FBI, was brought in. Only to find out that a nurse from the hospital in the nearby town of Twin Falls was responsible for the woman's death. That she was having an affair with the woman's fiance, if I remember correctly. She was having an affair with him, and he convinced her, tried to convince her to kill his fiance. But she helped try to cover up the evidence by taking that phone, bringing it here, and bringing it out to a remote location that, unfortunately, I am able to verify through law enforcement contacts has had a problem with people trying to kill each other. And I am not just talking about, oh my God, you're gonna kill each other. It was like, put down the goddamn gun. A lot of you don't realize the severity of what goes on. Personally, that hospital I just mentioned has a nickname because of some practices that are very illegal, and there are some cover-ups going on, to which I worry about some old friends of mine who currently are nurses there. And I pray that they ain't killers themselves. But you never know. They do say most serial killers happen to be men. But you also have to remember, those statistics were made off of the killers who got caught. You just never know anymore. As far as like Hillary Clinton and the mysterious vanishing emails, the constant changes in her story, yeah, that indicates something's up there. But however, this discussion did not start talking about government conspiracy, about serial killers, about anything of that nature. Because I can honestly go on with this type of thing. In fact, here's another one. Here's another one. Here's another one. Here's another one. Here's another one you have to consider. A lot of the times, during a child kidnapping case, you expect to be stranger danger. In fact, there was all sorts of programs to try to warn kids about talking to strangers and blah, 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 blah. When really, a good majority of kidnapping cases happen because of people that child knows personally, or at least ones that are documented. There are several missing person cases that still remain unsolved, believed to be connected to sex trafficking rings just because of the circumstances that surrounded the disappearance, but those cases went cold. But back to the point that I was trying to shift to. The conversation I had with this YouTube subscriber, and I'm not trying to pick on you if you're listening, you made some very valid points that I want to go over. These points were not made to talk about Illuminati, government conspiracy, things like that. They were talking about the supernatural in general, monsters, things of that nature. And after this commercial break, we're going to go into that a bit more. Stick around. Okay. I don't know what that was for. But let's get back to the topic. This YouTube subscriber mentioned how people should have the right to know. And this is an argument that I have actually come across on quite a few occasions. We have avenues for anybody who has access to the right equipment and has a basic knowledge of how social media, computers, electronics, things of that nature, as long as they have a basic knowledge of how everything like that works, they could probably figure out how to get some interesting content out there. And some people have tried to do so. The second they see something unusual, and they actually manage to find out how. Manage to capture that thing on film, to prove to people that they are not crazy. They are not making up the story that they are trying to tell. They put it out there so people can see for themselves and make their own judgments. In fact, I used to run a similar operation. It's where I actually tried to operate and piece together a YouTube-based paranormal investigation show. My old group that some of you may have heard of used to be called the Paranormal Raider Force. And that is a name that I've sort of kept alive, but haven't put too much focus on in some of my books. Because it ended up being a very short-lived operation. But nevertheless, I called it Paranormal Raider, The Journey. And on each episode, I would piece together real evidence that I've collected from individual cases. And some of the videos I put online are still available. You might be able to find them through playlists on my current YouTube channel, Specialist of the Strange. However, due to incidents that took place years ago that led to my team coming apart, that led to people's lives being put in danger, I stopped doing that show because it just did not feel right exposing some of people's lowest points in their life. And I'm not just talking about lowest points like someone recently passing away. I'm talking recently lowest points to where people are pretty sure the people who passed away are still hanging around. That there are things that technically should not exist hanging around and bugging them because they don't want to be treated like they are mentally ill. Even though technically mental illness is a factor that I still have to keep an eye out for just in case. But each case is a little different. And perhaps at some point, if you go into government agents, there was a point in many situations, JFK assassination, extraterrestrial landings, you can probably bet there was someone involved in this with Roswell, Eisenhower's alleged contact with the alien Greys, Area 51 technicians, Secret Service members that caught on to the president's nighttime activities, things of that nature. There was most likely someone who tried to act as a whistleblower, to try to pull an Edward Snowden. Maybe some of them did. And in those cases, you do hear those stories of mysterious disappearances, suicides under strange circumstances. You hear of people who, all their friends, all their family believed that that person could not have the capability to end their own life. All of a sudden, ending up with strange wounds that are inconsistent with someone who should have been dead. In fact, there was a case years ago. But this is going to kind of detour from my point, but it's an example. It's not the best, but there's an example. There was a case years ago here in Idaho, I believe it was in Jerome, to where a man's truck was found driven over the side of the Snake River Canyon. And inside that truck was the owner of said truck, chopped up in little pieces and stuffed into a bag. The police officially ruled his death as a suicide. The public announcement they made in regards to this case, they believed that that person intentionally chopped himself up. And I'm not just talking chopping off a couple fingers here, maybe a couple toes there, maybe castrating themselves. No, I am talking about head, arms, legs, torso being in separate positions, being chopped up, chopped apart, stuffed into a bag. The person who was chopped up then stuffed himself into a bag, then drove his own pickup truck over the side of the Snake River Canyon. This is, in fact, a very real case. That killer could very well be out there. Is there more to the story? Obviously. Could it be some very incompetent people being involved in that case? Very possible as well. You can throw your own theories out there on what happened. It could be very obvious on what happened in some levels. But the reality of it is the same. You don't know jack shit unless you were there for yourself. But that doesn't answer the question. Does the United States government, or any world government for that matter, because we're not the only ones looking into this phenomenon, does the United States or other world governments have previous acquired knowledge of extraterrestrial phenomenon, of ghosts, psychics, and things of that nature? In the terms of realism, not speculating loose threads drawn together by conspiracy theorists to make their points, not to draw my own conclusions, to promote my own agenda, other than discussing the real truth. Looking at all the information, it does appear with roughly 80% certainty, if we were to quantify the potential for it, world governments do have knowledge of the supernatural. They have knowledge of things on the other side, of extraterrestrials, potentially of even beings from mythology. There are many rumors, but very little evidence, and it could be potentially that all of our evidence of such encounters amongst government officials, even military personnel, could have been erased to avoid public panic. Why would they do this? The YouTube subscriber, in which it does kind of sound like I'm picking on, but I swear I'm not intending to come across like that, said they believed that society was a lot stronger mentally than they give credit for. These are notions that I honestly disagree with. Perhaps there are people who are ready to accept that information, but they themselves are in the minority. The people who actually sit back, try to gather all the information, maybe even do a little bit of research themselves, those are dwindling numbers. So much so that those people likely live a bit of a solitary existence, in which some cases may profile them as similar, if not, excuse me, my God, similar, if not just like many of the serial killers, rapists, and some of the most dangerous people in our world. Their conditions, so to speak, just manifested in different ways. However, if you truly look at it, yes, while they may have more resources at their disposal than the general public, and they may have previous knowledge, the only reason they have acquired as much as they do is because they're the ones that go out and chase it. Anything they deemed as a threat or could aid their own agendas, they have looked into. Project Stargate, MK Ultra, experiments in dealing with psychic phenomenon. Allegedly, they were shut down due to lack of results. Some speculate that those experiments are still in the running to this very day, just under new pseudonyms, so to speak. And it could very well be. It is speculated, now I'm choosing my wording carefully to not sound too much like the guys off of the show Ancient Aliens, but it is speculated that the government's habits of contracting work out to private institutions takes advantage of loopholes, so they may not have to reveal any information. Many political conspiracy theorists also have a habit of assuming that everybody who's under a government paycheck will have access to these secrets. If that were true, we'd all have the potential of learning black ops operations, government tests, top secret aircraft from our local mailman. Chances are they don't know. And what a lot of people don't realize is that if the government knows something, chances are the people put in charge of public relations, media liaisons, are, how should I put this? They are most likely kept in the dark. Not quite as much as the rest of us in society, but pretty close in comparison to what's really out there. But the truth is, there's only 1% roughly catalog and discovered as far as everything. And there is much more that everyone could find out on their own if they sought the potential to look for it. But however, we don't live in these days. It may seem like there is a great change with all of these political movements for social equality, the Me Too movement, things like that. Alright. Yes, it's about damn time that something happened in those regards. But going back to my social media analogies from earlier, looking at how the public responds in anonymity to certain ideals. The number of people who choose to just sit on their lazy, good-for-nothing ass, tossing around negativity, trying to bring other people down because they know that they're likely never to cross paths in the future. The number of people who simply don't pay attention to all the details, who try to listen to a story all the way through and try to jump on their own conclusions without visiting everything that is presented. The number of people who still hold on to old-fashioned belief systems, the people who refuse to... Alright, you know what? Fuck it, I'm going to say it. The people who refuse to call 911 because they are illegal immigrants and their own child is missing and potentially in life-threatening danger, but they will not call 911 because they are illegal immigrants. The people who call 911 just because the dog's being too loud, or their boyfriend's being mean to them, or their girlfriend won't go down on them. The people who call 911 because someone's air conditioning unit runs too slow. The people who ask, what is the number to 911? The people who can't remember their own physical address, the place in which they have lived, likely for years. It's one thing if they just recently moved and they're rattling off their old address. You know what? That happens. Same thing like if you had to get a new phone number. Things like that. You're just used to giving out that information. But if you lived at a location for years and you still do not know your own address, or people who feel the need to contact their parents to have them call 911. The people who try to get involved in police investigations only to end up putting themselves, the people who really need help, in life-threatening danger because they thought that they knew better. There are too many examples I can throw out to stay within my 1 hour time frame on this show. I'm going to say that right now. Here's another one. The people who who let their so-called significant others be deadly abusive to the point it escalates to physical violence. threats of murder. Children happen to be running in fear to try to find someone to help them because daddy's trying to kill mommy. People like that are the reason why the government keeps these things isolated. There are people who cannot handle the truth, and unfortunately, they outnumber the ones that do. And honestly, those of us who try to go in and physically help people, we do these things long enough, we see shit. And I'm not just talking about myself. I'm talking about cops, doctors, military personnel. We all can end up with some variation of PTSD and have these things haunt us to the point we contemplate day in and day out to put a gun into our head and pull the trigger just to get shit to stop. However, we still find the strength to move on. The people who try to claim, and I am mentioning someone very specific in this example, that they have forgiven their own attackers for what had happened, yet try to play the victim card years and years after the trauma is over, is done with, and justice was found. Who purposely try to play the victim card to try to get everybody to feel sorry for them, to try to work things in their own way. This is why secrecy must be enacted. You know what? I'll be honest. Like I said before, after I've had a few incidents where life-threatening conditions presented themselves, I shut down a lot of the public image. I keep myself available so those who need my help can try to find me. But nevertheless, there are still people who cannot handle the truth because they won't handle the truth. And the government doesn't want to. The government, police, military, they all have better things to do than to worry about the feelings. Because there are plenty of cases, and I'm sure that some of you who are in these fields that I have talked about can probably back me up on this. There have probably been numerous cases where because you had to go on a manhunt for one person, the real problem, the real victims, are being put into danger because you're being distracted by one person's incompetence or inability to handle what is going on. That is why governments keep secrets. Yes, the corrupt take advantage, as they always will if they find a way to benefit their own agendas. As for how we can get these things to move forward, how we can allow for more transparency, we need people to step up on all sides. The people who actually take the time to understand the situations, the people who take the time to try to help, to try to learn, and try to make sure these stories are told. We all need to step up. And perhaps we need to network better. Someone who... Alright, I'm just going to say it. Someone a lot smarter than she gives herself credit for once told me The world could probably be a very different place if we all just took the time to actually talk and understand each other. The world could be a very different place. A lot of the violence, the corruption, things like that, probably wouldn't exist if we all just took the time to talk. Advice that she should probably practice herself in some cases. But it is a very good point. And while those who seek to try to find the answers are usually more than willing to take on mentorships, apprenticeships, whatever you want to call it, students. We need those students to be able to step up. And unfortunately, the ones that do usually have their own situation they're trying to sort out. And I'm speaking from experience. That's all I have for tonight. I want to know your thoughts on these matters. If you disagree with me, that's fine. Speak up. I just ask you to be respectful. If you disagree with the notions I have to put up, feel free to comment. All I'm asking is you be respectful to me, to yourself, and to others. If someone's looking to cause trouble, leave them alone. Leave them alone, or unless you have experience on how to de-escalate those situations, just leave them alone. They're not worth the time. Maybe I should do another video on that type of subject. How to know how to help certain people. But that would require a lot of what ifs. And that would be a very long video that nobody would watch through its entirety. They would try to skip through to find all the good bits. Can't blame them though. I'm probably guilty of doing that on a few occasions myself. So anyway, like I said, that's all I have for tonight. If you have questions, comments, concerns, if I confused you in any way, feel free to comment, like, subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to. Find me online, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram. I'm all over the place. Check out some of my affiliate links. You can get some special discounts. And yes, while I do earn a little money on the side from them, trust me, they're good. I wouldn't promote them on my end if they didn't at least know what the hell they were talking about. I will see you next time, my friends. Take care. Have a good night. Stay safe out there.